Seraphine Vale had a rule about hope. She did not keep it. Not in her satchel. Not in her workroom. Not in the small cracked cup she used every morning for her yarrow tea. Hope was a thing that took up space, and she had learned, the hard way, the only way anything real is ever learned, that space is something you protect. You do not fill it with things that can be taken. She had been in Doro's Edge for 3 years when they dragged him in. 3 years is long enough to stop flinching every time someone says your name. 3 years is long enough to learn which floorboards in the inn creak, which farmers cheat their weights at market, which children will eat the wrong berries no matter how many times you tell them not to. 3 years is long enough to almost believe that you have in fact arrived somewhere. Not home. She did not use that word anymore. Somewhere. Doro's Edge was a border settlement, which is a polite way of saying it was a place that existed at the edge of everyone else's attention. The Central Territories had roads and record offices and pack registries and all the machinery of belonging. Doro's Edge had a market 3 days a week, a well that only worked when it felt like it, and an arrangement with the Border Patrol that was best described as mutually convenient ignorance. People ended up in Doro's Edge the way debris ends up at the edge of a river, not because they chose the spot, but because the current stopped working against them at that particular point. Seraphine had a workroom at the back of the only inn. It smelled of dried herbs and something underneath the herbs that she could never quite name. The ghost of every tincture she had ever ground, maybe. Every poultice. Every desperate middle-of-the-night application of something that probably should not have worked but did. Her mortar and pestle were the best things she owned. They were heavy, pale stone, worn smooth in the grip from years of use. Her grandmother's. The only thing she had carried out of the Vale settlement when the administrative decree came through. Administrative decree. That was the official language. She still had the paper somewhere. She had never thrown it out. She did not know why. She was grinding calendula on a Tuesday morning. Tuesday because that was when the market farmers brought fresh-cut flowers before they wilted, and she bought what she needed for the week. When the innkeeper's boy came to the door and said, in the way that children deliver terrible news, which is to say with great factual calm and no apparent awareness that it is terrible, "There's men at the door. They've got something on a cart. They asked for the healer. Tell them to bring it in," she said. She did not look up. She had learned not to look up before she knew what she was dealing with. Looking up had a way of committing you to things before you had enough information to know whether commitment was wise. They brought him in on a cart, 3 men who were not looking at each other, which told her immediately that something had gone wrong and none of them were willing to decide whose fault it was. He was wrapped in oilcloth. He was very large. She registered that in the peripheral way that you register important information before you decide how to feel about it. The oilcloth was dark in patches, blood, old and new. And underneath the blood, underneath the oilcloth, underneath the 3 days of carrying smell that men accumulate on long, desperate journeys, she caught it. Silver poisoning. It is a specific smell. Not everyone can identify it. She had asked her grandmother about that once, how she could catch it when other healers couldn't, and her grandmother had said something about bloodline sensitivities that Seraphine had not fully understood at the time, and understood now better than she wanted to. She came around the work table. She did not ask his name. Names make things complicated. Names turn tasks into people, and people into attachments, and attachments into the particular kind of pain that does not respond to yarrow extract, no matter how precisely you grind it. "Put him on the bench," she said. The 3 men put him on the bench. She looked at him then. First survey, clinical, the way her grandmother had taught her. Start at the head, work down, note the breathing first, because breathing tells you how much time you have. He was breathing. That was not a given. Silver poisoning at this stage of advancement. She could already see the black lines tracking up his neck, the characteristic branching that looked wrong to most people because it was wrong, because it was the body's bond channels filling with something that was trying to kill them. Silver poisoning at this stage had a survival rate that she did not feel like calculating right now. "How long?" she asked. 3 days, one of the men said. 3 days, right. Then, "You can go," she said. "We can't leave him." "You can," she said. "And you will. Come back in a week." They looked at each other. That complicated, guilty look again. They went. She closed the door. She looked at him again, alone now, and let herself actually look rather than assess. And he was very clearly dying, which was the most pressing relevant fact. And also he was. Below the gray pallor, and the black lines, and the oilcloth, and the damage, structurally remarkable, in a way that she was going to file away immediately and not think about further, because it was not useful information. Right then, she started grinding. Silver poisoning in alpha-class individuals is complicated by the bond channels in a way it is not in other classifications. This is the part she never explained to anyone, because explaining it would require explaining how she knew it, and explaining how she knew it would require explaining who had taught her, and that woman was dead now, executed, specifically, for practicing restricted classification healing arts. And Seraphine had decided a long time ago that the knowledge survived better if it kept its head down. The bond channels in alpha-class individuals run deep. They are the pathways through which pack connection operates, the invisible threads that a functioning alpha uses to monitor, regulate, and sustain the people bound to them. It is a lot of infrastructure to maintain. It is also, when silver enters the system, a lot of pathways for the poison to travel. The standard treatment for silver poisoning blocks the spread. It is effective if applied within the first 24 hours. After that, the silver has already moved into the channels, and blocking the spread means blocking the channels, which means killing the bond network, which means, in an alpha of any real pack significance, something that is functionally a different kind of death. Her grandmother's treatment did something different. It did not block, it drew. It used the channels the way they were meant to be used, as pathways, but in reverse, pulling the silver back toward the surface through the same network it had traveled, so the body could process it rather than wall it off. The theory was correct. The application was brutal. She worked for 6 hours the first night. Her hands did not shake. She had trained herself out of shaking years ago. She fed him tinctures through a reed because his jaw was locked. A silver poisoning symptom she had read about but never treated, and it was exactly as described, and she was grateful for the precision of her grandmother's notes. She monitored the lines. She calculated the spread, recalculated, adjusted the dosage. Somewhere around the 4th hour she talked to him, not because she thought he could hear her, he was not conscious in any meaningful sense, but because silence in a sick room at 3 in the morning has a particular quality that she found, after enough years, unpleasant in a way that she could not entirely rationalize. "You are inconveniently close to dead," she told him. "I want you to know that the effort required here is not proportionate to the information you have given me." He did not respond. She adjusted the compress on his neck. "I'm not complaining," she said. "I'm noting it." She worked until dawn. Then she rinsed her hands, made herself tea in the cracked cup, sat in the chair by the window for 45 minutes without thinking about anything useful, and went back to work. On the 3rd day he opened his eyes. She had been checking the lines. The black branching had, over 3 days, retreated from his neck and was concentrating now in his left shoulder, which was where it needed to be if the treatment was working, which it was. When she heard the change in his breathing, she looked up. His eyes were open, storm gray, aware, tracking the room the way someone tracks a room when they have survived things and their body has learned to assess before the mind catches up. They landed on her. She looked at his pulse point, steadyish. "Better than yesterday. You'll live," she said. He said nothing for a long moment. She went back to checking the lines. "Where?" he started. His voice was gone, stripped down to something rough and low. 3 days of no water will do that. "Doro's edge," she said. "Drink." She handed him the cup, not her cracked one, a plain one, and watched to make sure he could manage it. He could. Slowly. He watched her the way she had noticed some people watching things they have encountered unexpectedly. The way you look at a door that opens into a room you did not know was there. Not alarm. Something more careful than alarm. She did not ask what he was looking at. She noted his pulse again, made a note in her small leather book, capped the pen. "What did you do?" he asked. His voice was slightly better for the water. "Treated you," she said. "How?" Not a question, an examination. She had grown up around alpha-class individuals. She had been raised in a pack, after all, before the decree, before the administrative language, and she recognized the register, the voice that is used to receiving complete information. With the tools I have available, she said, rest. She was already turning back to her table. She heard him exhale, not quite a laugh, not quite a sigh, something between, and then he was quiet, and she ground chamomile, and outside the window the market started up, and a child was yelling something about a dog, and the morning continued in the way mornings continue, regardless of what has happened in the night. He recovered in increments. She tracked them. She tracked everything. It was how she was built. It was the one trait she had never managed to grind out of herself. The compulsive documentation of small changes, the way a herbalist cannot walk into a field without automatically cataloging what is growing. Day 4, he could sit up without her assistance. Day 5, he asked for food with something approaching authority, and she gave him broth and told him the authority was premature. Day 6, she caught him trying to stand. She told him to sit down. He sat down. Day 7, he sat in the chair by the window and watched the market below with an expression she did not try to interpret. He asked questions in the deliberate, systematic way of someone accustomed to gathering information, about the settlement, about the trade routes, about the border patrol arrangements. She answered what she felt like answering, which was less than everything. He did not ask her name for 9 days. She had begun to think, in the private space of her own thoughts, that this was deliberate, that he was waiting for something before he asked, the way her grandmother had waited, in negotiations, until she had enough information to make asking mean something. On the 9th day he asked. She was at her work table. She was not grinding anything. She was making notes in the leather book, small, careful annotations in the column beside the treatment log, the kind of notes that were for her eyes only, the kind she was writing now without entirely understanding why. "What's your name?" he asked. She considered not answering. She genuinely considered it, sat with the non-answer, tested its shape, decided it was impractical. "Seraphine," she said. He went still. It was a particular kind of stillness. She was aware of it. She did not look up. She was looking at the pen in her hand, at the small neat letters in the book, at the line she had just been writing, which was a dosage note about the shoulder compress schedule. She heard his breathing shift. She knew that shift. She had grown up hearing it. The thing that happens in alpha-class individuals when something registers in the bond system. Not a feeling exactly, more like a signal, like a compass settling to a direction it has found. She filed it, labeled it, stored it. Behind everything else in the cabinet where she kept the things she was not going to examine, she did not ask what he had recognized. She capped her pen. "Sleep," she said. "The shoulder needs another 3 days of compress before you move it properly." He said, "All right." She went to bed in the room next door, and she lay in the dark, and she did not think about the way his breathing had changed, and she was very deliberate about not thinking about it, which is of course its own kind of thinking. Right then. The soldiers came on the 11th day. She heard them from the workroom. The particular sound of organized movement, the discipline of it, feet on the road in a pattern that was not market traffic, or farmers, or the border patrol's casual Tuesday rounds. She heard horses. More than a few. She was grinding calendula. She kept grinding. The innkeeper came to find her 20 minutes later. He was pale. He was the kind of man who had been carefully not asking questions for 11 days, which is a particular talent that Doro's Edge tends to cultivate, and now the not asking had caught up with him and landed on his face in the form of a color that was not there before. "The men outside," he said. "They have banners," she said. Yes. She had heard the fabric in the wind. She had identified the weight of it. "Which house?" he told her. The mortar kept moving, grinding, calendula petals, even pressure, the way her grandmother had shown her. Let the weight of the stone do the work. Don't force it. Just keep the motion steady. The pestle moved in her hand. Steady. Even. Calendula, Calum Dreth, the Alpha King, the man who had signed the decree designating the Vale bloodline Omega-class redundant, which was administrative language for "you do not need to exist in the form you have been existing in," and the territories have decided that your dissolution serves current resource allocation priorities. She had a copy of that decree somewhere. She had never thrown it out. The mortar kept moving. Right then, she ground the calendula into a fine, even powder, measured it into a small cloth pouch, tied the pouch with jute twine, labeled it in her small, precise hand, and set it on the shelf next to the other pouches. She picked up the next thing. She kept working. He came to find her that evening himself. Not a soldier, not a messenger. Him, moving like a man whose body was still in negotiation with itself, still calibrating the absence of the poison, but moving under his own authority in a way that had a different quality than all the days before. He stood in the doorway of her workroom. She did not look up. She heard him. She was aware of him the way you are aware of weather before it arrives. Not a sight, not quite a sound, something more fundamental. She kept working. You knew, he said. She was quiet for a long moment. The pestle moved. Not until the banners, she said. He took that. She could feel him taking it, the way large amounts of information are taken, carefully, with both hands, making sure nothing drops. I need to explain. The decree, she said. I know. Flat. Clean. 2 words doing a lot of work. Seraphine. I know what it said, she said. I have a copy. She still hadn't looked at him. She was watching her own hands, the pestle, the powder in the bowl, the small deliberate work of them. She heard him cross the room. She heard him stop on the other side of the work table. Why didn't you, he started. Leave you to die, she said. Yes, that is the obvious question. She set the pestle down. She looked at her hands. Yarrow stained at the creases. They were always stained somewhere. I don't know, she said. This was true. She had asked herself the same question on the first night, in the dark, at 3 in the morning, with the tincture in her hand and the decision already made by her hands before her mind had caught up. She had asked herself and not gotten a satisfying answer and filed it. She looked up at him. This was the first time she had looked directly at him since he opened his eyes. It landed differently than she expected. Not the way looking at a patient lands, the assessment and the inventory, but the other way, the way that is not clinical at all, the way she had been specifically avoiding. She looked at the work table instead. You should eat, she said. The kitchen closes at 9. He did not move. I need you to know, he said, that I did not have complete information, she said. I assumed. Seraphine. Go eat, she said. The shoulder compress needs to stay on until morning. I'll change it before you go. Long silence. Before I go, he repeated. You're leaving, she said. You have to. You have a crown. She picked up the pestle. That is not a sentence I say every day, she added, which was not something she had intended to say, which was the problem with letting her guard down even slightly. He made a sound, not quite a laugh. No, he said. I imagine not. He went to eat. She ground for another hour. She was not thinking about anything. She was extremely deliberately not thinking about anything. He left the next morning, before the market opened. She had the parcel ready. She had packed it the night before, in the dark, after she heard the inn settle into sleep around her, the remedies he would need for the next 30 days, the shoulder compress instructions written out in her small, careful hand, the tincture schedule. She labeled everything. She tied it with jute twine. She gave it to one of his men without ceremony. She turned to go back inside. He was there. He had come out of the inn himself, in the early gray light, in clothes that were not oilcloth and were not borrowed from the innkeeper's emergency supply, in clothes that fit him, and said something about where he was from that she did not want to interpret. She stopped. He closed the distance. He took both her hands. His hands were warm. They were very large. They held hers with a specific deliberateness, not gripping, not holding, the way you hold something that you are committing to memory before you have to give it back. She let him. She kept her hands still. She did not squeeze back. She was very focused on not squeezing back, because squeezing back was the thing that meant something, and she was not in the business of meaning things. I'll come back for you, he said. She had heard a version of this sentence before. Different mouth. Different early morning. Different doorway she had been standing in. Younger. Before the decree. Before the administrative language. before she had learned to file things in the cabinet and keep the cabinet closed. "Safe travels," she said. He looked at her for a long time. She looked at the jute twine on the parcel his man was holding. She had tied it in a specific knot her grandmother had shown her. She was thinking about the knot. He let her hands go. He left. She listened to the horses until she couldn't hear them anymore. Then she turned back inside. Right, then. She did not wait. That was the official position. That was what she told herself every morning while she worked. Every evening while she noted the day's cases in the leather book. Every time the sound of horses on the road made something in her chest do a thing that she was not going to name. She was not waiting. Waiting was passive. Waiting implied an expectation. She did not do expectations. She was simply continuing to live in the place she had been living, doing the work she had been doing, which happened to be the same work she would have been doing regardless. She took on more cases. There was a bad fever season. Late autumn brought a respiratory sickness through the border settlements that she worked through with such focused efficiency that the innkeeper's wife told her that watching her in an emergency was like watching a woman who had decided that panic was beneath her. Which was accurate. She had decided that. At a specific moment, in a specific year, she could identify both if pressed. She began documenting the bond channel treatment. This was the thing she did not examine too closely. She told herself it was practical. The knowledge should not exist only in her head, in case of something. In case of what, she did not specify. She told herself she was writing it for posterity, for the record, for the abstract future healer who might need it. She did not tell herself she was writing it because something had shifted in her, because doing the treatment on him had shaken something loose in her that she had been keeping carefully packed. Because watching someone live who should not have lived because she used knowledge that was not supposed to survive had made her feel, briefly and inconveniently and against her specific policies, like things that were lost could sometimes be found. She wrote in the small leather book with the careful pen. She kept the cabinet closed. She did not use the word hope. She kept working. The 3 months passed the way things pass when you are paying careful attention to not noticing them, which is to say, in some ways too slowly, and in some ways without her quite tracking how they accumulated. She knew it was 3 months, because she finished her annual herb inventory on the same week she had finished it the year before and the year before that, and when she sat down with the records and the new ledger she noted, in the left column where she sometimes noted contextual information, that it had been 3 months since the 11th day, 3 months since the parcel tied with jute twine, 3 months since the market square was empty at 5 in the morning, and a very large man held her hands like a catalogue. She did not write anything else in the column. She closed the ledger, she made tea, she drank it by the window, standing up, looking out at the road. The road was empty, right, then. He came back on a market day, no banners. She heard the horses at the edge of the settlement, and something in her chest went very still, the opposite of beating faster, the kind of stillness that is not calm but is working very hard to look like it. She was at her market stall, calendula in the front, yarrow behind it, small cloth pouches labeled in her small hand, tray of tincture bottles. A child was currently testing her patience by picking up every bottle and setting it down again. "Don't," she said, to the child, for the 4th time. The child set down the bottle. She became aware, without looking, that someone had stopped at the edge of the market square. She could feel it the way she could feel the silver poisoning smell, before she could explain why she could feel it, just the sense of it, directional. She finished her argument with the farmer about the elderflower extract dosage. She was right about the dosage. She explained why she was right, briefly and clearly, and the farmer paid her the correct amount, which he always did in the end, and she wrapped the vials in paper and said thank you, and when she looked up across the market square he was there. He had clearly made a decision about the coat, about the absence of banners, about coming himself, without ceremony, into the middle of a market day in a border settlement that existed at the edge of everyone else's attention. He looked at her across the square. She looked at him. Then she sold 2 pouches of dried chamomile to the innkeeper's wife, and she rearranged the front display because the calendula had gotten knocked slightly sideways, and she noted to herself that she needed more jute twine before Thursday. Then she crossed the square. She was not running. She was walking at her normal pace, which was efficient, which was the pace of someone who knows where she is going and has decided to go there. They stopped an arm's length apart. "You're here," she said. "I said I would be," he said. She looked at his shoulder. Habit. The professional reflex. "How is the shoulder?" "Following your instructions," he said. "I have notes." "You kept the notes." "I did." She looked at his face. The storm-gray eyes. The steadiness in him that she had been filing away for 3 months. The thing about him that was not his size, but something underneath his size. The quality of someone who holds weight without making the weight obvious. "You came back," she said. "Yes." She said nothing for a moment. The market moved around them. Someone was arguing about fish prices. A dog had gotten into someone's vegetable display. "There are things we need to talk about," she said. "I know," he said. "I know there are." "The decree," she said. "Yes." "And what I am," she said. "And the treatment I used, and what that means, about what I know, and where I learned it." She said it plainly. She looked at him while she said it. She was not hiding from it. His eyes did not move from her face. "I know what you are," he said. She went still. "I knew," he said. "The moment you said your name, I knew, Vale. I knew what the decree." He stopped, started again, more carefully. "I had been given information about the Vale bloodline that was incomplete, strategically incomplete. I did not know, when I signed it, what I was signing away." She said nothing. "That is not," he said, "an excuse. I want to be clear that I am not offering it as one." She was looking at his coat, the too plain coat that he had chosen deliberately. She was thinking about deliberate choices. "Then what are you offering it as?" she asked. "A fact," he said. "One of several I need you to have, if you're willing to." He stopped. She had never seen him uncertain before. She had seen him in agony, which is different. She had seen him unconscious, which is completely different. She had not seen him not know how to finish a sentence. She found, to her own surprise, that she wanted to help him finish it. She did not. It was not time yet. "Come," she said. "We can walk." They walked to the edge of the settlement, where the road turned into the tree-lined path that eventually became, if you walked long enough, a territory road, and before that was just a quiet place where the market noise dropped away and the thing you were carrying could, for a moment, breathe. He told her about the decree. He told her everything. The territorial council, the bloodline reclassification policy that had been running through six-packs in 2 years, the political pressure, the administrative advisors who had presented the Vale bloodline's dissolution as a resource optimization and not as what it was, which was the end of something old and specific and irreplaceable. He told her the names of the advisors. He told her about the report he had read only 4 months ago, from an independent healer who had documented the Vale bloodline's specific healing sensitivities, and what he had understood when he read it. His voice was even the entire time. He did not perform regret. He did not decorate it. She walked beside him and said nothing. When he was done, he stopped walking. She stopped too. She was looking at the tree line. The trees in autumn at the edge of Doro's edge were the kind of unremarkable brown-gray that she found, for some reason, comforting. They were exactly what trees at the edge of a border settlement in autumn should look like. Nothing pretending. She thought about her grandmother's notes, the leather book she was filling with the Bond Channel treatment documentation, the mortar and pestle in her workroom, heavy, pale stone, worn smooth in the grip. She thought about 3 years in Doro's edge and what it had taken to get here, to this unremarkable brown-gray tree line, to this moment. "I'm not going to tell you it's forgiven," she said. "I don't know yet if it is. I'm not asking you to," he said. "I came to give you information. You deserve to have complete information." She turned to look at him. In the gray autumn light, without the market noise, without the inn's walls around them, he looked. She noted this with the clinical precision she applied to everything, like a man who has been carrying something very heavy for a long time and has decided that the carrying is part of his life and not a temporary condition. She recognized that. She recognized it the way you recognize your own reflection in water that is not quite still, distorted, but correctly shaped. "What do you want?" she asked. He looked at her. "I want you to have the option," he said, "of choosing something different than this, than hiding." "I'm not hiding," she said. "Then being hidden then," he said. She looked at the trees. "And you?" she asked. "You want to be the thing I choose." A long pause. "I want," he said, carefully, "to be someone worth choosing. The rest of it, that's yours." She was quiet for a long time. The wind moved through the trees. Brown-gray leaves, some of them. Predictable and unremarkable. She thought about the cabinet. The things she kept in it. Filed, labeled, not examined. She thought about the words she did not keep. "I need time," she said. "I know," he said. He said it the way someone says a true thing, not reassurance, not performance. Just acknowledgement. She looked at his hands. They were at his sides. Still. Waiting, she realized. Because he was absolutely waiting. But not the passive kind. Not the expecting kind. The kind of waiting that is also a form of respect. She had not had a lot of experience with that specific kind. She reached out and took his hand. She did not squeeze. She held it. Palm to palm, her yarrow-stained fingers against his still healing ones, and she did not look at him while she did it. She looked at the trees, the unremarkable brown-gray trees. He did not squeeze either. He just held on. They stood there at the edge of the tree line for a while. The market noise was far away. A dog was still barking about something. Someone had won the fish price argument, or lost it, or stopped caring. She could not tell from here. Right then, she was not going to name what this was. Not yet. She was going to stand here, at the edge of Doro's edge, which was the edge of the thing she had made of her life for 3 years, and she was going to hold a hand that had waited 3 months to be held, and she was going to let the yarrow smell on her fingers be exactly what it was. The smell of work, the smell of what she did, the smell of what she had kept when she had lost everything else. And she was going to let that be enough for now. And maybe, in a while, it would become something more than enough. She was not going to call that hope. She was just going to hold on. Some things do not need to be filed away. They only need to be held. And her hand stayed in his, warm and unhurried, in the brown-gray autumn light at the edge of somewhere that had not been home, and was, she thought, perhaps beginning to renegotiate the terms of that word. Not yet. But the cabinet was, for the first time in 3 years, slightly open, and she did not close it.